There's a new poll out this morning, NBC News, that shows significant growth in Democratic support for impeachment. And the survey was done before George's interview. Pelosi, though, Speaker Pelosi has really held her line on this. How is that flying with progressives?
Well, you know, I think for me, this question should not be about polls. It should not be about elections.
Sure.
I think that impeachment is incredibly serious, and this is about the presence and evidence that the president may have committed a crime, in this case more than one. And so I believe that our decision on impeachment should be based in our constitutional responsibilities and duties and not in elections or polling. That being said, with the increase in polls, I think the American people are now recognizing in a much broader scale the depth and the severity of the misconduct coming out of the White House, and a demand to protect our institutions and protect the rule of law in the United States, and at least opening an inquiry into possible misconduct.
So how real is that progressive frustration that Speaker Pelosi has said, at least so far, and she seems to be really holding the line that she's not ready to do that?
I think it's quite real. I believe that there is a very real animus and desire to make sure that we are that we are holding this president to account.
What have you told her about this?
Well, you know, I think we come together as a caucus and we have these conversations, and those, as the speaker likes to say, they are family conversations. They are ones that are held in confidence. But I do believe that that this is truly, again, and I've said this publicly, I've said it privately, I've said it when we subpoenaed the Attorney General and Secretary Ross today on the census, this week on the census, that this is about the rule of law, and we have to make sure that we are holding this president account is holding all of government to account.
This is AOC responding to a surge of growth in support of impeachment in just the last month. According to the newest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, Democratic support for impeachment rose from 30% to 48%, with over 60 lawmakers already coming out in support of starting an impeachment inquiry. But the biggest obstacle to doing so is Nancy Pelosi, who's been on the receiving end of ire from progressives, and for good reason, in that no one is sure exactly what she's waiting for. Because, to be clear, regardless of what any polls say, regardless of public opinion, there is clear grounds for impeachment. The Mueller report outlined a staggering 10 instances of obstruction of justice. It outlined evidence of collusion with Russian officials, even if it didn't meet the burden of proof necessary to rise to the level of criminal conspiracy. And then Mueller himself held a public press conference in which he said outright that if he could have exonerated Trump, he would have.
And as set forth in the report, after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
And then he went a step further in making it crystal clear that according to DOJ guidelines, he didn't have the option to indict the president.
Under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional. Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
It doesn't take a genius to be able to read between the lines. In fact, even in his report, Mueller explicitly wrote that Congress has the authority to act on the information compiled by his investigation. He wrote, Congress has the authority to prohibit a president's corrupt use of his authority in order to protect the integrity of the administration of justice. What he did, in effect, was create an entire roadmap for impeachment on the basis of obstruction of justice, which was the exact same charge that both Nixon and Clinton had articles of impeachment drafted for. And then, on top of all of that, Trump admitted in an interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos that he'd be willing to collude again.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
To be crystal clear, doing both is illegal. Accepting any dirt from any foreign source is a felony. So he might think that going to the FBI too cancels out the illegal part, but it doesn't work that way. You don't get to rob a convenience store and then check in with the local police afterwards and you're suddenly absolved. The felony part is still a felony. And look, this is obviously a pattern. From firing James Comey to try and relieve pressure from the FBI's initial investigation into the Trump-Russia controversy, all the way to admitting on national television that he'd be willing to commit a felony to get reelected, this presidency is rife with lawlessness. So failing to at least open an impeachment inquiry sends only one message, that Trump can get away with it again. And he'll try, which is obvious because, he just gave an open invitation to the entire world for help attacking the Democrats. All Pelosi is doing, by virtue of trying to wait on public opinion to keep shifting or to establish some ironclad case, is emboldening Trump, encouraging more illegal activity, and endangering yet another election. Honestly, how many times does someone have to obstruct justice for it to be illegal enough? Because I was under the impression that it was once. If nothing else, Nancy Pelosi should take a lesson from history. Whereas the Watergate break-in occurred in June of 1972, Nixon still won re-election by a massive landslide only 5 months later, winning 49 states out of 50 and boasting of a 62% approval rating. By the time the truth about the Watergate scandal was uncovered only a year later, his approval rating had been cut in half to 31%. And when he finally resigned in 1974, it was 24%. All of that is to say, Nixon's impeachment proceedings weren't driven by his approval rating. His approval rating was driven by the facts laid out in his impeachment proceedings. As for Trump, until someone shows him that he's not above the law, he'll continue to think that he is.